Hey, how's it going today? Is August, the 2nd of August, Friday, and we are taking a look at the market, what kind of opportunities we can find. In today's video, I'd like to take a look at food production and everything what is happening with regards to food. That would be uh, timing. So we finishing and closing to the end of the summer, and we're gonna be taking a look at new season when it comes to preparation of food products. Food stuff, I don't like its definition. Stuff, I don't like it. Food products. So depending on where you might be within the world, some of the preferences can look like grain, rice, potatoes. I would define it as carbohydrates, right? So where those carbohydrates would come from. And there's a bigger picture. I'll try to capture it, but might be able to do it within 20 minutes or so. But I still won't be able to cover everything in necessary detail. But there's a lot of things happening. I'm just trying to stay on top of those kind of things. I would be reading all these articles for the first time, but I'm not necessarily would be able to read entire articles, right? But either way, so let's begin by trying understanding. So if we were to take a look at market when it comes to food production, we're gonna begin by taking a look at finances and borrowing. So if you were to prepare for next season, so this season might be close to over. When we were to take a look at next season and what's happening when it comes to food production, we can begin by taking a look at something that happened yesterday. That would be Bank of England cuts interest rates to 5% in the first drop since March 2020, right? So they have reduced borrowing costs. So then it comes to 5%. This is how cheap. It could always be 2%. I wish it was 2%, but 5%, it's not bad, right? But either way, so let's take a look at this market and all what is happening. We can begin by taking a look at what's happening within UK, and from there let's briefly touch on what's happening within the world. I don't know. I didn't take a look at Europe. We're gonna be taking a look at perhaps Africa, China, other areas, not necessarily Europe. But if we were to prepare for new season and borrowing a lot to feed different nations, what would the process would look like, right? First press release there I have two. Something that was published today and yesterday. That way, first one we can briefly touch on it. But that would be example and how difficult it can be to be a farmer, right? Which is a very important area, by the way. That would be farmers fined for obstructing environmental agency officer. So it might be important since at least people are working, right? Once that been said, let's progress to the next article. That will be government to restore stability for farmers as confidence among sectors is very low. That will be government commits to address low confidence and provide stability for farmer sectors. Figures show confidence remains very low. So as well as we should look after our farmers, right, and how we're getting food to our table, right. We can take a look at this article, but most likely we have covered all this information already. If we were to assess this sector, it's very hard when it comes to flooding, temperature changes, output of production yields very low, all these kind of things, right? So I can go for hours, right? But perhaps even then, let's progress to world and let's take a look at what's happening when it comes to preparation and so borrowing, reduction on borrowing, so people and all farmers can borrow at a cheaper rate. But let's take a look at perhaps Africa and or Asia, different markets, and what they are doing there when it comes to addressing the similar, if not the same problems, right? For people who do not know, what is farming sector, right, and what is an issue when it comes to food production? There was a study completed 2021 that would be a meta-analysis of projection global food demand and population at risk of hunger for a period of 2010 to 2050. So there is a big issue when it comes to food output and how much food can be produced. So that's a bigger issue. I don't want to perhaps bring other companies into this conversation, since there's a lot of when it comes to cost, demand, people entering into the sector, a lot of issues, right? But briefly, let's touch on this case study and let's try to understand where things going to be when it comes to production of food, and where things are right now, and how much more food would need to be produced within the next 25 years, 26 years. There are a lot of studies completed, but as well as we don't have enough time. I wish we can delve in entire research work. That would be important. But for now, let's take a look at what would be the most important part. That is the most cited figures originated from FAO briefing paper. 35 states that the world food production needs to increase by 70% to feed the world population in 2050. So demand for food would only increase, right? So market demand would only increase, and we're going to be taking a look at who are the businesses, perhaps in later, not necessarily within today's articles. But when it comes to borrowing money, as of now, let's take a look at borrowing money and how this money might be invested in what kind of production, and what the government's and what they're going to be looking to do to. When it comes to demand, we can take a look at supply now, right? Some of the articles that I managed to find, something that was published or updated 1 day ago, that the credit ratings were meant to help sub-Saharan countries tap global investors to fund much needed development, but low scores, heavily borrowing, and bad luck have left many struggling, crushing bond debt, right? It's a lot of things, right? If a lot of governments are going to be looking to borrow a lot of capital and reinvest in food production, there would be credit rating, as well as where that money would be used, and perhaps many infrastructure projects underway, many things. So many things that backed, right? But that would be overall in Africa and sub-Saharan and some of these regions, and where a lot of finances should be raised, and where the food would come from, as well as fishing, some of those overfishing issues, all these kind of things, right? We just scrapping the surface, right, with some of those issues happening. But either way, let's progress to the next article. Let's take a look at the next article. That would Hungarian farmers lead camels to Budapest to highlight climate change. So some people are messing around over there. I don't know if they do making into news, so I think they do accomplish what they said to accomplish with the camels. So first of all, where they get the camels from. But either way, that was just an example of something that was published a day ago with things that's happening in Europe and with climate change, just so people would notice all the changes and what's happening, right? Ivorian farmers turn to new rice variety to increase yields and profit, right? So perhaps more resilient seeds, perhaps that would be another way to addressing this issue. And we can briefly touch on this article, but this video is going to be too long if I delve too much into detail. We still take a look at carbohydrates, so that would be rice, and who are governments who potentially consuming a lot of rice in comparison to grain, rice, potatoes, all these carbohydrates, right? And that would be a very unique problem, and something that's been published today, an hour ago. So I thought it might be worth touching. And let's take a look at the last article and close on the last article, right? And the last article, and let's close on that when it comes to food stability. And so we have started by taking a look at borrowing and the increase or reduction rates of borrowing, so 5%, right? And where many farmers are going to be taking a look at addressing this issue, right? And when it comes to perhaps borrowing to purchase new equipment, purchase new seeds, perhaps purchase some more inventory. All these kind of things, right? And let's take a look at what's happening within China. China's vice president calls for action to secure autumn grain harvest. and that China's vice president, his name has urged local authorities to seek to minimize agricultural losses and ensure robust autumn grain harvest after torrential rain and floods lashing. There's the name of the location and country's largest wheat growing province. A lot of governments are suffering from climate changes, right? So I can highlight more. It's been, I believe, third time when we're talking about climate change and its climate change impact that will have on farmlands and all farmers overall, and where it's very hard to predict the weather, right, and in particular rise in temperature. There was some articles where they were discussing of in Arctic temperature increased by 10 Celsius. But either way, so the temperatures are changing, right? As well as there's a massive impact on a lot of governments when it comes to where the food would come from, right? Once that's been said, thanks for watching. See you next one.